Well, I thought I'd get the comments of Frank Gaffney, who's a longtime friend of the program and the founder and president of the Center for Security Policy. Frank, welcome back. And what should we think about this new AMLO character, who's now the president of Mexico?
Lars, they call him AMLO. I think of him as uh-oh, because what's coming, I think, not just in terms of the radicalization of Mexican politics. This guy is in the mold of Hugo Chavez, is likely to be the further deterioration, if not the outright destruction, of the Mexican economy, much as was done by Chavez and his successor Maduro in Venezuela, except it's going to be next door. So that's a problem. It's also a problem, I think, that he has been very clear in his campaign that he believes it is a human right, that is his term, a human right to migrate into the United States, whether you're Mexican or whether you're from someplace else for that matter, and that it would be his duty as the Mexican president to help you make that migration. And that means, of course, predominantly doing it illegally. So, yes, we could indeed see, I think, something tantamount to an invasion, especially if it's compounded by financial disaster. And we need a wall to try to triage what would otherwise be pouring across that border. A wall of the kind that Donald Trump has promised for a long time, it seems to me to be the place to start. We may need something else in the meantime, and I'm personally impressed by a technology called Blue Servo, which has operated for a number of years on the Texas border. It's inactive at the moment, but could very quickly be reactivated. And the interesting thing about this, Lars, is that it enables cameras, military-grade, all-weather night-day cameras, to have their feed provided to the Internet and to all manner of people monitoring the border. Indeed, when it was operating, it had something like 1.5 million hours of free support to the Border Patrol people, with just willing volunteers keeping an eye on what's coming across the border, warning people that it's coming, and that resulted in a 92% intercept rate. That's something we should use as an immediate step, not only across the Texas border, where it could be reactivated quickly, but I believe across the other states. And that would complement the wall once it's built as another line of defense.
You know, it's funny you mention that, because we've seen over the years lots of occasions where scientists have said, if we could divide this problem up and have a bunch of different people watching or calculating using their computers. I remember when they were searching for the Malaysian air flight, that they were assigning different satellite pictures, saying if we divide this up and many thousands or millions of people.
Crowdsource.
Yeah, crowdsource it out. And I like that idea. The other point you make is, and it reminds me of, and tell me if I'm off base here, there's been an idea that's been around as long as I've been on the air called Nation of Aztlan. And these groups were both racist groups, but they were also groups that believed that they should take, that people in Mexico should take back the American Southwest, and they referred to it as Nation of Aztlan. And I say they're racist groups because they referred to it as land that had been taken from the bronze-skinned people by the white European invaders, forgetting, of course, the fact that most of Mexico's ruling class is themselves, or are themselves, the descendants of European invaders who took it away from the real native peoples of Mexico, and they still run it. And now they want to take part of the American Southwest. And it sounds like AMLO's proposal is to not necessarily take the deed to the property, but if you can occupy the property, possession's 9/10 of the law, and you have effective ownership, especially if some of those people that he encourages to invade our country end up one way or another with American citizenship and American votes, the game's over.
Yeah, that's exactly the point, I think. There's another name for all this, Lars, and that's Reconquista.
Yep.
And it's a project of La Raza, which is the race. I mean, you couldn't get more clear that even they themselves think of this as a racist operation. But
Frank
is going to be trying to bring that about.
Yeah, La Raza is the other group that's also the race. And do you recall during the campaign when Donald Trump was running, and it was still the primary, and he got all kinds of heat for describing a particular judge who had heard a case, and the judge, as I recall, was affiliated with a lawyers group in San Diego. The judge, I think, was from Indiana, but he was a Latino judge, an American citizen, but he had voluntarily allied himself with a La Raza lawyer group out of Southern California. And people were saying that Donald Trump was the racist for going after this judge, saying you can't get a fair decision out of this guy. But when you identify that this is a man who voluntarily identified himself as a lawyer who was going to work on behalf of people based on their skin color and ethnicity, I mean, I've often referred to La Raza as the Tan Clan, because they are a group that seems no different in its bigotry than the Klan is. It's just that it's aimed at a different group of people.
Yeah, a lot to what you say there. And I think the thing is, from a national security point of view, and that's what this is coming down to, Lars, is increasingly what's coming across that border are not just people who are trying to get a better life or just flee some sort of violence in their home country. There are drug traffickers, as you know. There are human traffickers, as you know. There are terrorists, as you know. And it is absolutely malfeasant on the part of the United States government, which is a fancy word for saying irresponsible and reckless and dangerous, for them not to secure that border the way it had been throughout history, which is with physical barriers to penetration. And for a place where it's not necessary to be sure across that long border, there's plenty of natural physical barriers. This is where they don't exist. Need that and on both sides of it to protect us from penetration underground or people coming over that wall.
Frank,
it's just common sense. It's what the American people want overwhelmingly.
Exactly. We've got to watch for what this guy is going to do to Mexico and what he might do to our country. Frank, thanks so very much, and have a wonderful Independence Day.
You too, my friend. Happy 4th.
Thank you, sir. Frank Gaffney, with the Center for Security Policy in Washington, D.C.